And now, as usual, my battery wants to die, so I'm going to change it, and hopefully it won't change the angle too much. Hi everybody, welcome to my February 2017 TBR. January continues to be a huge reading month for me, which is awesome given my goal of reading more in 2017, but the time I have available to me in February is going to be much more limited due to a trip at the end of the month. Because of the limits on my time, I have, I think, 5 books on my list that I really want to finish during February, and the rest of my TBR that I present in this video is going to be kind of the buffet of books from which I will choose other pieces to read. So let's start out this month's TBR with the 5 books that I mentioned that I definitely want to finish during February. All 5 of these books are galleys or advanced reader copies that I received through NetGalley. Despite the rather large catalog of books that I've never gotten to because of my time spent away from fiction, I would really like to get into reading more ARCs and review copies. I was lucky enough to be able to start that process by receiving approval from the wonderful publishers that use NetGalley to read the 5 books that I'm going to talk about in just a moment. Because these are galleys through NetGalley, I don't have any physical copies to show you, so I'm going to insert the cover images over here somewhere when I talk about each of them. First up is a graphic novel, The Backstagers Volume 1. This series is written by James Tynion IV, and the art is by Ryan C. Hopefully I pronounced those names correctly. I'm sorry to those creators if I didn't. This series follows a main character named Jory, who recently moved and has been enrolled in an all-boys private high school. In the process of trying to figure out where he fits in this new environment, Jory ends up joining the stage crew for the drama club, nicknamed the Backstagers. The Backstagers are portrayed as kind of a ragtag team of what other people might consider misfits, and this is about Jory finding friendship in that group. The next 2 books on my list are middle grade novels that were provided by Sourcebooks Jabberwocky. The first is The Pants Project by Kat Clark. In this story, we follow the main character Liv, a transgender boy, as he fights against his school's policy that would force him to wear a skirt to school because of the gender he was assigned at birth. The second book is The List by Patricia Ford. The description for this book touts it as Fahrenheit 451 meets The Giver, which really intrigues me because those are 2 of my favorite books. The List is set in a city called Ark, in which speech and use of language is restricted to an approved set of 500 words. The main character in the novel is Letta, who is the apprentice to the city's wordsmith. To my understanding, the wordsmith is appointed by the city to save language outside of those restricted 500 words. Upon her master's death, Letta is appointed as the city's new wordsmith. And this tells the story of her uncovering a plot in which the city is going to try to basically wipe out human speech and what she does in order to try to save language for the citizens of her city, Ark. In kind of a 180-degree turn, the last 2 books on my list are both adult romance novels. The first is Leo Loves Aries by Anita Sunday. This book was actually already released in December 2016, and it's self-published by the author. This book follows the main character Theo and the relationship that starts up between him and his roommate, who he is trying to vet to be a possible date for his sister for an upcoming wedding. And the last book on my must-read list for February 2017 is At Attention by Annabeth Albert. This book was provided by Carina Press, and it is the second in a series called Out of Uniform, written by Annabeth Albert. I haven't yet read the first book in this series, but the description of the second book caught my attention, and so I requested it over on NetGalley, and was delighted when I was approved to be able to review this. In this novel, Apollo, a former Navy SEAL, a widower, and a father to twin daughters, is looking to get a roommate who can help care for his daughters and help around the house. It just so happens that an old friend's younger brother is needing a place to stay. This younger brother is named Dylan. Dylan ends up moving in, and this novel follows the budding relationship that occurs between Apollo and Dylan. That concludes the list of 5 books that I really want to finish in February 2017. Beyond that, I have a large stack of books that I'm really interested in reading, from which I can choose to fill out my reading for February. Out of that large pile of books, I wanted to share with you some of the ones that I think it would be more likely for me to read in February, given the opportunity. First up are 4 books that I was clued into by watching TBRs for the recent Diversathon. First up on the list is For Today I Am a Boy by Kim Fu. This novel follows the main character Peter, whose family immigrates to Canada from China. It explores Peter's troubles with trying to reconcile his gender identity with the expectations that are put on him by his family, his Chinese heritage, and the small town that he is growing up in Ontario. Next up is If I Was Your Girl by Meredith Russo. This is an Own Voices young adult novel about a transgender girl named Amanda. Amanda has moved to a new school in Tennessee for her senior year in high school, and although she is trying to keep a low profile, she starts to develop feelings in a relationship with a boy in the school named Grant. The novel explores Amanda's struggles with her budding relationship and whether or not to reveal her secret that she is transgendered. Next we have A Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Ozeki. The description for this novel is a bit vague, and I think rightfully so. The general setup for the story, at least as far as I can tell, is that there are 2 separate narratives that take place in this book. One follows a fictionalized version of the author Ruth Ozeki, who finds a Hello Kitty lunchbox washed up on the shores of a small island that she lives on. Within that lunchbox, she finds the diary of a Japanese teenager, Now. The other narrative that we get is from the diary pages of Now, and through this we learn about Now's life, the bullying she's experiencing, her feeling of being out of place after being relocated from America to Japan, even though she is originally Japanese, and as well as deep depression that's running through her and her family based on a change in their social status because of fallout from her father's employment. I'm not quite sure. Part of Now's narrative is to tell the story of her great-grandmother, who was a very long-lived Buddhist nun, and so my understanding is that a large part of this narrative also speaks about aspects of Zen Buddhism. And last on this list we have Moonshots, the Indigenous Comics Collection, Volume 1. Moonshots contains graphic fiction pieces from a variety of North American creators, and they are based around storytelling principles from indigenous populations in North America. My understanding is that pieces in this volume run the gamut from retellings of traditional indigenous stories through speculative fiction about the future. The second category of books on my book buffet for February are around short fiction. I would generally like to get a bit more into short stories and short fiction so that I can get an exposure to a wider range of genres and authors. The first selection on this part of the buffet is the recently released Flying Lessons and Other Stories, edited by Ellen O of WeNeedDiverseBooks.org. This collection is aimed at middle grade readers, and the focus is on helping readers find themselves in the pages of books. So the stories in this collection cover a wide range of topics and feature characters from a diverse array of backgrounds. I have ebooks of the other 2 collections that are in this part of my list, so again I will put the cover over here somewhere. The first is The Best American Science Fiction and Fantasy, edited by Karen Joy Fowler and John Joseph Adams. This is the inaugural edition of what will hopefully become a staple in the Best of American Writing series. Speaking of the Best of American Writing series, the last collection on this part of my list is the Best American Short Stories 2016 edition. This year's edition was edited by Juno Diaz and Heidi Pittler. This is, of course, a very long-running and well-respected series, but this will be the first time that I have read any of the collections, and I'm really looking forward to this one. And last but not least, in this month's giant list, I have another 4 books that are kind of just random pieces. The first one is a book that I came across while browsing one of my local libraries, and that is Gaze of Our Lives by Chris Ripper. This is the first in a series of queer romance novels written by Chris Ripper and put out by Riptide Publishing. The name of that series is Queers of La Vista. From what I can tell, the novels in this series are kind of like the soap opera of queer romance. This first book follows a main character named Emerson who has multiple sclerosis. Despite his deteriorating physical condition, he dreams about being able to be the dominant partner in bed, but has kind of given up all hope until he has a chance meeting with a guy on the bus named Obi. And this story follows that developing relationship between Emerson and Obi. The next 2 on the list are some nonfiction picks, because I really can't get outside of my wheelhouse too much without feeling a bit uncomfortable. The first is Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer. Rather than try to butcher the premise of this book, I just wanted to read you a part of the book jacket description. Brilliantly synthesizing philosophy, literature, science, and his own undercover detective work, Eating Animals explores the many fictions we use to justify our eating habits, from folklore to pop culture to family traditions and national myth, and how such tales justify a brutal ignorance. As a vegan, I feel like this is a book that I probably should have read already, but haven't, and I would really like to get around to reading it. The second nonfiction book on my likely to be read pile for February 2017 is Cleopatra: A Life by Stacy Schiff. I discovered Cleopatra: A Life through a recommendation in a recent episode of the podcast Literary Disco. From what I can tell, this book is a biographical piece that tries to tell as much as possible the true story of Cleopatra, kind of disentangled from the popular culture and mythology that has kind of risen and grown around her. As a classics major who has always really enjoyed hearing the stories around the big figures of the ancient Greek and Roman world, I am really looking forward to reading this piece. And last but not least, Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo. I finished the first book in the Grisha trilogy, Shadow and Bone, over January, and I'm really looking forward to being able to continue the series. So that's it. That's the end of my gigantic list, most of which I won't be able to get to in February because I'll have a week to 10 days that I am unable to read because of travel. I'd be interested to find out what you have on your TBR in February. So leave a list or link to your video or blog post in the comments section. As always, if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment box below. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, have a wonderful day. This is a thing, right? Hopefully I got a good thumbnail on